We have the Alexandria Dialogues Briefing Round 2, where it's going to be moderated by Dr. Mohammed Bayoumi, Assistant Residential Representative, Environment and Climate Change Team Leader at the UNDP Egypt. And we're having His Excellency Professor Issam Sharaf, former Prime Minister of Egypt. And we'll be hearing some youth voices. We have Ms. Nadine Ihab and Mr. Sameh Kamel, as well as Professor Mustafa Kamal al-Sayed, Professor of Political Science, Faculty of Economics and Political Sciences, Cairo University, Egypt. Please join me in welcoming them all to the stage. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's really my pleasure to be moderating this session with this distinguished panelists. And it's really my pleasure to be with you here. I know a lot of the audience, they have been university professors, previous managers, and previous colleagues in work. It's really a pleasure to see everybody over here, and I hope it's going to be a useful session for everyone. This session is going to be concerned with the three dialogues, dialogue number 4, number 5, and number 6. Dialogue number 4 is going to be about the internal, external, and virtual mobility. And the presentation is going to be by His Excellency Dr. Issam Sharaf, former Prime Minister of Egypt, former Minister of Transport, and Professor of Transport Engineering. And I had the honor to be one of his students at a certain stage. The dialogue number 5 is going to be about the Youth Vision to Sustainable Life in Egypt, 2050. And we have 2 university students, Ms. Nadine Ihab and Mr. Sameh Kamel, 2 youth activists who have been involved in several youth activities inside and outside Egypt. Ms. Nadine is studying law in Ain Shams University. Mr. Sameh is studying medicine in 6th of October University. Dialogue number 6 is going to be presented by Professor Dr. Mustafa Kamal al-Sayed, and we all know him as a well-known political scientist and professor in Cairo University and American University. And he will be speaking about the drivers of public management and how technology is going to affect the operations in the Egyptian government in 2050. Without further delay, I'm going to invite His Excellency Dr. Issam to start the first presentation. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. There's going to be 15 minutes for each speaker. And after that, we are going to have a question and answer session. Hopefully, we can accommodate your questions. Thank you. Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Well, actually, this topic or this dialogue of mobility, we discussed that very extensively in our meeting. And there is a lot of information and talks and opinions. So I won't be able to talk about it all. Let me very quickly start with the topic of the dialogues, the foresight. Because we have a rapid changing world full of uncertainties and risks, so actually dealing with futures need a multi-dimensional approach and thinking and the philosophy more than or beside the typical approaches using numbers. Of course, Egypt is no exception when we talk about Egypt future. Second thing is mobility. Mobility is a natural phenomenon. Always there is some sort of movement happening regardless of the direction, either we like it or not, but always there is a movement. And mobility is happening in different forms, like physical or virtual, internal, external, or social, up or down. And if I were to select a single trend that is and will deeply affect mobility, I would select information and communication technology with no hesitation. Because ICT is the core of the already started fourth industrial revolution, which will affect all aspects of life, economical, social, political, and ecological. And of course, mobility is no exception. Under these expected changes, we have to, maybe Dr. Sharif mentioned that, we have to rethink who we are. Who we are and how we think and behave. It's very important how to perceive these huge and deep changes. And what does it mean to be a human? And this is some philosophical opinions of some philosophers. Because actually most or a lot of activities that are going on will be automated. So what does it mean to be a human? How we can actually change the culture of people to accept just such deep changes. And here, when we talk about ICT, I just throw a very important technology now, which is the big data. Big data technology, I'm sure all of you remember that we used to use regression analysis, and we have to omit the outliers because we don't know why they are outliers. Actually, with different layers of huge data and big data, we can explain a lot of things. So this is one of the technologies. When we talk again about mobility, like the physical or virtual, it's transportation is the player here. And of course, there is a lot of things happening, like autonomous cars, like seamless transportation. All these things already started. However, the success, not in 2050, maybe in 2030 or 2025, is largely dependent on how people will perceive that and let me say, respect these changes. Just to conclude, is foresight as a tool to investigate future is very important to Egypt, because Egypt is a very susceptible to global changes. Egypt is at the center of at least 4 important circles: the African circles, Arab circle, Mediterranean, and developing countries. Unless we have good perception of these changes, any change in one of these circles, plus Asia, plus other things, but any change of one of these circles will directly affect Egypt, and we have to be ready for that. And to sustain the great efforts done through these dialogues, we should keep the momentum, this issue, and keep this issue alive. I suggest some sort of making institutionalism to this issue of the foresight in Egypt, maybe in a form of permanent committee led by the Ministry of Planning as a government agency, along with Alex Biblioteca and United Nations, in addition to a group of experts with diversified background. This is very important because this is something what notice. You have to have social experts. You have to have philosophers. You have to have people from different activities to be able to discuss all possibilities in the future. On a personal level, I liked very much from these exercises the concept of futures. It's not only actually a future, it's futures. So what, because there was a discussion, foresight is actually, we can use it to develop a set of futures. And maybe we select the preferred option and then try. But the most important thing is not to be surprised by the more you have these foresight techniques, you can actually expect. And you have a list of features that you can take it into consideration. Of course, you know, also maybe I'll take this chance and talk about the values. The issue of values actually is when you look at what's happening in the world, in maybe this nationalist movement, in arts, in philosophy, even the Kant philosophy of values and things like started to come back. People in the world, actually, they are annoyed by the current globalization. And that's maybe the reason for a lot of this movement, and maybe there is no explanation, but I believe they are trying to express their anger with the current globalization and the unfulfilled dreams of the capitalism and the Enlightenment one. And I believe that there will be a movement, maybe we'll call it Enlightenment 2, coming in with consciousness and values coming to the surface again. Well, finally, I would like to express my deep thanks and appreciation to all people that organize these dialogues, and hope to continue in another format to keep this very important issue alive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Assam, for keeping the time. Your Excellency made it on time.
I said my 5 minutes to somebody.
If you allow me, I'm going to keep the questions until the end, after the 4 presentations. So we're moving to the university students, to the young people. We start with Ms. Nadine. Ms. Nadine Ihab.
Okay, so the topic of our youth dialogue was how sustainable life will look like in 2050. And so one of the most important outcomes actually of the dialogue was that all of us came from different fields and different backgrounds, which made us have different perspectives, which actually made us kind of list the priorities, because what was on my list of priorities was different from someone else's list of priorities. And that made us decide or list what was crucial for everyone in 2050. And so we decided with first thing as education. Because one of the main drivers was quality education and not just education. And many efforts are actually being made by the Ministry of Education with Education 2.0. I believe that the role of foresight played is illustrating to me the importance of education as a primary driver. It has the ability to shape future generations, future minds. It has the ability to develop countries and develop economies. So also an emergingly important role was technology and potential disparities that may result in the formation of smart cities and ultra-speed transportations such as high-speed trains. So hopefully in 2050 we won't have to take more than 10 hours to reach Upper Egypt, so that we'd have more connection as youth and everyone in general. So, and also development in technology must be reflected in education, as there is no point in developing external factors without developing in human capital like education. Another main driver that was not explicitly discussed in the dialogues, but is what's important for all of us, is gender equality. Many efforts are being made on nationwide level, with many females serving as ministers, for example. However, I foresee that with a true investment in education, women in Egypt will be able to become judges in general prosecution, which is a field that suffers from a high gender inequality, the judicial field. As the gender inequality in the judicial field is something that people started to acknowledge recently, with Egypt being 0.5% of female judges serving, and other neighboring countries such as Lebanon serving with 50% female judges, we can really see how we need serious actions and legislations. So by 2050, we achieve gender equality. The problem is also with leadership positions in general, with 27% of women occupying the leading positions, leaving 73% to men. In 2030 vision of Egypt, the target is to reach 43%. However, something important that we all realized in the dialogues is that female political participation has increased, which is a good indicator. And with that, I'd like to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nadine. I would like to tell you a secret, actually. Nadine has her comments on the mobile and she was hiding it in the notebook. Just for the sake, to understand how the new generation is reacting now and using this technology.
That's true.
Mr. Sam, please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Muhammad. First, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Sameh Kamil. I'm a senior medical student at October 6 University. And I belong to two very important entities, which is the United Nations Major Group for Children and Youth, and the newly formed League of Arab States Youth Inclusion Mechanism, which is the Arab Youth Platform for Sustainable Development. So I would like to begin by reading a couple of sentences from the chairman's summary that I will be building my speech upon. So the chairman's summary says, the current generation intends to hand over a socially cohesive nation that is both sustainable and prosperous, where all Egyptians will be able to live a life of well-being and dignity. Actually, my colleagues and myself are very thankful for starting dialogues on 2050 today, because this generation will be handing us over at 2030, and we will be handing over to the next generation on 2050. So a few topics that were discussed in the youth dialogues, the Alexandria dialogues. First, artificial intelligence. It was a huge debate whether artificial intelligence is actually assisting humans today, or is it taking their jobs? So what about in the future? Will it be assisting, or will it be creating less jobs? And will the unemployment rate be going up, or will they going down? Today, we can say that unemployment rates in Egypt, especially for youth, are going a little bit down and a little bit better than the plan that Egypt had when we were adopting the national vision of 2030. But let's give an example. Let's say 10 years ago, the invention of something called the drones was not known. Drones today are used in the US, for example, for delivery. So if you get an order online, there will be a drone to deliver your package to your house. So the delivery man that we have here today in Egypt, in a few years, will not be present. So this is a job that will disappear. Another thing, when we were watching old movies and they're taking a shot of like an ocean of a huge building, when I was asking my dad when we were young, how did they take that shot? He would tell me that there's a helicopter and a man in the helicopter taking a picture, taking the video. So today, all what it takes to take that video, the same video, is just one man standing with a phone or with a laptop or with whatever to control the drone that is taking the entire shot. So instead of 2, 3, 4 people working on one shot, there's only one person standing on the ground and doing a very different job than the other people. This is maybe a very simplified example of artificial intelligence maybe taking over, but also there were other examples of artificial intelligence creating more jobs in very different fields. There was another thing regarding artificial intelligence. How would it affect the human nature? Would it be turning people into introverts, or would it be turning people into extroverts? So let's say today, I want someone to speak with. There is an artificial intelligence application that you can download either from the App Store or the Google Store. It's called Replica, that you can go on that application and start speaking with language, coding, and start telling them who you are and what your problems are. And that language would be learning from other users what to say and how to react to your problems. So instead of seeing a psychiatric, for example, you would be just downloading the application and using the help of that application. So instead of people interacting with each other, it would be turning people into extroverts. So these were the opinions that were discussed in the first point, artificial intelligence. The second point, DNA-based medicine. As a future physician, this is something that concerns me very much, is that healthcare, basic healthcare, might not be an option in 2050. Starting today, there are companies already existing, and we have a company actually in Egypt that started personalizing medicine based on your DNA. They take a sample, they take it to the lab, a few months later, you come back and they tell you, this is your body type, and this is how you will lose weight. This is how you will cure this disease. This is good for many diseases that we can't find cure for today. But would that be generalized, and that would be the main use of, that would be the main practice of medicine in the future? The third topic that we discussed is climate change in Egypt. Today, Egypt is being very volatile. Climate change is hitting Egypt, and we all see it, and we can all feel it. It's not theory. We can see it today. It's December, and it's still kind of warm outside. Egypt has never been that warm before. But in the discussions, some of the members were saying that we are here today in the Biblioteca. A few years later, the sea levels are rising, the Biblioteca might disappear. It's scary, but it's true. Also, one more topic that was discussed is plastic waste. Yes, Egypt is taking some measures on plastic, single-use plastic, but it's not enough. Today, one governorate completely banned single-use plastic, which is the Red Sea. Good step, but can we accelerate it more so that 2050 we don't have bigger and bigger and bigger piles of plastic in the oceans? The last topic I wanted to discuss is sustainable consumption and production. If we continue consuming and producing the way we are today, this is not sustainable at all. If we continue just by the rate that the United States is consuming and producing, we would need 5.5 more planets to fulfill just the rate that the United States is continuing with. So we only have one planet. We don't have 5.5. So we need to take extra measures for sustainable consumption and production. Some recommendations that came out of the sessions is that we were very happy with this multi-stakeholder engagement mechanism that we're having. Today, the United Nations adopted the multi-stakeholder engagement mechanism of engaging young people, engaging NGOs, engaging local authorities in decision-making. Today, the League of Arab States adopted the same mechanism. And we see that today, Egypt started to adopt a multi-stakeholder engagement mechanism to engage other entities in decision-making. Finally, I would like to thank the UN Egypt and the Ministry of Planning and the Biblioteca for organizing this session. And by this, I conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sameh. You touched on several issues related to telemedicine, artificial intelligence, sustainable consumption and production, climate change, plastics. each one of these issues need a session and a conference by itself. Thanks to the colleagues for covering the dialogue number 5. You saved some time, and I understand there is a statement from the youth participating in the dialogues that they want to deliver to you.
Talking about what was the most important and significant outcome of Alexandria Dialogue is how effective and efficient it was, collecting a bunch of youth in one place from different backgrounds and diverse major of studies, thinking and planning for the future in Egypt in 2050, and actually not limiting ourselves to what we aim for, but also considering the obstacles that Egypt might face during its journey.
One thing I learned from Alex Dialogue was using strategic foresight to think or talk about the future. One of the things I really liked about participating in such a dialogue is that we as youth can come up with ideas and solutions and actually put like one full plan or idea, although we have different aspects, backgrounds, plans.
والحاجة اللي surprised me the most إن إحنا برغم إن إحنا تخصصات مختلفة ومجالات مختلفة بس كلنا اجتمعنا على حاجتين مهمين جدا الإديوكيشن والتكنولوجي.
من الحاجات اللي أنا هفضل فاكرها ومش هنساها عمري كله مدى التناغم والانسيابية اللي كانت في الحوار وإن إحنا اتعلمنا كتير جدا جدا من بعض إحنا كشباب وكشباب وتعلمنا برضو من المسهلين أو من المنسقين للمؤتمر والحوار الشبابي ده.
The one thing that I came out from the Alexandria Youth Dialogues that I have been able to imagine a day of a regular person and 2050 with all the smart things that we will be living at, like smart homes, smart cars, everything will be in a smart way.
And I learned that people have different perspectives on the future of Egypt in 2050. What surprised me the most is that a lot of people were optimistic for the future of Egypt.
أكتر حاجة مش هنساها إن أنا يوم مصر 2050 هتمنى إن إحنا يكون عندنا مؤتمر تاني إن إحنا نتكلم فيها إيه اللي حصل وإيه اللي ما حصلش وإن إحنا هنكون بنحكي لعيالنا إن دوت حصل وإن إحنا فكرنا بكده وإن مش هم يعني هم كمان يفكروا قدامهم 30 سنة يعني نخليها إن هم يعملوها. وساعتها هكون عندي 53 سنة وأفكر إن أنا وأنا عندي 23 سنة كنت أنا بعمل إيه وكنت بفكر في إيه.
أهم أوتكم طلعت بيه من الديالوج بتاع اسكندرية طبعا إني أنا دلوقتي أفكر لحياتي بشكل أو أفكر لمستقبلي بشكل مستدام عشان أحقق ديسنت لايف وابتدي احط اكشن بلان لنفسي ابتدي اشتغل عليها انا تمام مش لازم استنى الجهات العليا بس ابتدي اشتغل انا برضو عليها.
انا كانت من اهم الحاجات بالنسبه لي في الدايلوج اني اساسا I'm working on many projects related to the SDGs فكانت حاجه حلوه جدا ان اعرف ايه اللي يهم الشباب الفتره الجايه وهم عايزين يشوفوا مصر فين وكمان كانت من اهم الحاجات بالنسبه لي اني اقابل ناس جايه من باك جراوندز مختلفه ليهم اراء مختلفه وشخصياتهم مختلفه وان نتعلم من كل واحد فيهم.
So one of the main outcomes of the Alexandria Youth Dialogue was opening a youth channel for dialogue on the topic of 2050 on a national level, which is a great step towards recognizing youth as a key partner for development.
I love meeting people with different ideologies, with different mentalities. That was great. Sharing ideas with them. That was something that I will always remember for the rest of my life.
A very important output for me was how we perceived 2050, and I really can't wait to see how it's gonna actually be versus how we thought about it's gonna be. And that's what I would like to take with me for the rest of my life.
Now we're moving to the dialogue number 6, which was about the public management. And Professor Dr. Mustapha, please.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy, glad, and honored to share this panel. And I would like to express my thanks to Dr. Richard Dictus, the coordinator of United Nations office in Cairo. And I would like also to express my thanks to the Biblioteca Alexandrina, which is hosting this very important meeting. I'm going to talk about the drivers of public management, and I'm going to divide my talk into two parts. The first part will discuss the drivers of public management, and the second part will examine the implications of these drivers on public management. Now, insofar as the drivers of public management are concerned, the first driver is the vision. The vision which determines the role of state, and flowing from this vision of the role of the state, the functions of the public management, public administration would be decided. An example of this, Gamal Abdel Nasser, or the officers, the free officers who overthrew the monarchy in 1952, had a certain vision of the role of the state. The state should be used as a way of promoting social reform and economic development. As a result of this, we had new ministries for agrarian reform, industry, scientific research, higher education, etc. So the public management is a reflection of a certain political vision. Now we have a different political vision which aims at reducing the role of the state. So in 2050, what will be the vision of society for the role of the state? What should be the role of the state in 2050? In particular, what should be the relationship between the state, its institutions, and the private sector and civil society? Should the state continue to impose its, I wouldn't say hegemony, but domination on public sector, civil society, everything that is happening in the country? If this is possible now in a country which has 170 million people, this is no longer possible. So I think we need to, those who will be living in 2050 will have to decide what is the vision for the role of the state, and flowing from this, what should public administration do? Because public administration is the instrument of the state in order to implement its vision, which hopefully is accepted by society. An important element of this vision is, the conflict or the complementarity between security and development. How important is security and how important is development? Now we know that security dominates everything. This is reflected in allocation of resources, in decision making, in appointing people to important posts in the government. So I hope by 2050, the importance of security, of course, security is very important function for the government. I hope security will prevail enough so that we devote more resources, perhaps not to development. By the year 2050, Egypt hopefully will become highly developed, or at least developed. So therefore, the debate will be between security and welfare. So what is the relative importance of security, and what is the relative importance of welfare? Hopefully the state will devote more resources to welfare, and security would not be the determinant for deciding who should occupy a certain post in the government, what sort of decisions would not be the predominant criteria for taking a certain division. So this is the first driver of public administration, the vision which the society has for the role of the state. The second one is self-learning. The bureaucracy, does learn over time, and it makes mistakes, it achieves successes. So this leads to self-learning. So with this self-learning, the public administration could improve its performance. The third element is in fact domestic and external shocks. Domestic shocks like a revolution. A revolution, of course, would change the priorities of society. So the January Revolution, and I insist on using the term revolution because this is what is mentioned in the Constitution. The revolution of 2011 called for bread, freedom, justice, human dignity. So these, should define the goals of the government. So the government should aim at providing security, freedom for the people, promoting employment, ensuring social justice, and treating the people humanely. So this is a domestic shock. Of course, I mean, the domestic shock might take some time to be reflected in the work of the administration, but it is very important. Then you have external shocks. External shocks like, what happened in many countries in 2008, the international financial crisis, of course, led to important changes in the management. It became important in countries like the United States, Great Britain, Germany, Japan, etc., to control the movement of capital so that, external financial shocks would be avoided. One shock, which I wouldn't call it external, but it is, also natural shock, but this is global warming. Global warming is a shock, but it is a shock which is producing its effect, gradually. Egypt is going to face the threat of the rising level of water. And, this beautiful city, Alexandria, I don't know, might be submerged by the Mediterranean Sea. So this is very important. And we have seen that this is already, affecting the functions of the government. We can see this, waves barrier which is being built. So, what is the impact of natural disasters which are expected? We know this very well from studies of, climate change, etc. So this is, of course, it may come as a shock. So it will influence the work of the management. So these are important drivers for the public management. There are also other drivers which come from, society. One, of course, the population, the size of the population, the quality of population. A government that is running 5 million people is different from a government that is running 170 million people. So this might lead to expansion in the activities of the government, increase in the resources which go to the government. Rethinking about the tools which the government is using in order to deal with those people. So population, their size, also the quality of the population, their level of education. A government dealing with an educated population is very different from a government dealing with a population, the majority of whom do not know how to read and write. So the quality of population is also very important. So I think these are, the most important drivers for public administration, which will have their impact on the public management in Egypt in future. How these drivers are reflected? How do they, influence the working of public management? Under these conditions, as change becomes the rule, so it is very difficult for the government to continue to perform its function the same way. It has to be innovative. It has to find new ways of, dealing with problems which cannot be dealt with the old way, or these are new problems, so therefore they require new solutions, new ways of dealing with them. So it has to be an innovative management. It has to be also a responsive management. It cannot wait for a problem and then, when the problem aggravates, it starts to intervene. No, it has to be capable of foreseeing the problem long time in advance, and of course it will have to have the potential to expect what sort of problems. It must have the scientific capacity, it must have data, it must have crisis resolution groups so that the problems are known in advance and then the government would be responsive to them. Also, as the level of population improves, as the majority of people are educated, it will have to change its way of dealing with the people. The Egyptian administration so far has inherited the colonial approach to the Egyptians. So Egyptians don't feel that they are dignified. Most of the Egyptians, of course, depends on the social class to which one belongs. But if someone who is a peasant, unskilled worker, goes to a government office and tries to ask for something, he is dealt with as if he is, definitely is dealt with as if he is a citizen of a second or third class. But when you have a country, the majority of whom are well educated, then the approach of the administration will change. So these changes will affect also the way the administration looks at people. But most importantly, the government finally will have to reflect on what this man, Adam Smith, said in 1776 when he said that division and specialization are division of labor and specialization are very important for an efficient economy. So the Egyptian government has to think of what functions it does in society, what sort of division of labor should be respected. It will have to think of what activities should be done by the government and what other activities just should be left to the private sector or to civil society. The government has many activities. It regulates, it does manage things, it can be pioneering, starting certain activities which are new in society and then later on leaving them to other societal actors. It can protect society against disasters. It does help vulnerable groups. It protects the environment. So all these are functions which are carried out by the government. But the government has to decide not only which of these functions it will undertake, but also which share should be given to the government and which share should be given to other societal actors. But more importantly, the government has to decide to decentralize its activities. So far, everything in Egypt is run from Cairo. And we talk very much about decentralization, and I have participated myself in many meetings to discuss a new law for local government. It never came out. And even when I participated in these meetings, I knew very well that they are useless. Nothing will come out because there is a strong will to maintain everything in Cairo. So, with growing population and complexification of the problems faced by society, the government cannot, undertake everything and cannot run everything from Cairo. So I think decentralization would not be a decision taken voluntarily by the government, but this is something which will be imposed on the government. The government will have, this is something very necessary. So the division of labor, I think, is something very important, and decentralization. Also with an educated population and with the availability of advanced technology, transparency would become a fact of life. It will not be easy for the government just to hide its activities or to make it obscure for citizens how to get whatever they need from the government. Transparency would be a rule. Also, the technological advances would make it easy for the government to turn to something which is known as lean management, al-idara rashiqa, we say in Arabic, in the sense that instead of having 100 government employees doing one thing, and of course they do not do it, they end up not doing it, it will be enough to use a smaller number with an advanced technology and also, an intelligent organization of work. It would be possible to reduce the size of the bureaucracy, not reduce the activities of the bureaucracy, but to reduce its size and to increase its efficiency. I think these are the most important dimensions of this problem, the drivers of public management and how these drivers are affecting public management in Egypt in future.
Thank you, Professor Mustafa. Thanks to all four panelists. Allow me now to open the question and answer sessions. We're going to take the question in batches. And please introduce yourself and to whom the question is addressed. We take one question from each one side. تفضل فندم.
First for Dr. Mustafa. Yes. And what about the Orwellian view of the states in the future? I'm not talking about only Egypt. This is one. For our student panelist, Mr. Kamil, I think also for the United Nations that we should first not reinvent the wheel. The problems of unemployment due to technology and artificial intelligence has been discussed in length during the past 5, 6, 7 years. Even in the third generation of AI before the fourth one. If you have in hand the 2016 Davos Fourth Industrial Revolution document, if you have in hand the reskilling document of the World Economic Forum, for example, as a matter of example, there are hundreds of examples. We know that around 2 billion jobs will disappear in the next 20 years. We know very well what are the new jobs and the new skills which will be required. So we have to build on this knowledge base already existing and not trying to reinvent things as if they have not been discussed. For example, this is discussed in the world today. In China it has been discussed. In the States, in the European Union it has been discussed. Are we going to reduce the number of hours of work so that many people could work? This is a suggestion. What is the reskilling scheme of a government for those who lost their employment because of the old skills which will not be required? Who will finance this also? That I'm telling the problems that are discussed beyond what you have said or beyond what is in the document of the dialogues. And are we going to talk about a social stipend for those who cannot work, and who and how it will be financed? There are other also suggestions that the social work done today, which freely done without any charge, could be paid so that you can attract people toward this type of skills. This is what is discussed today. No more the jobs, the new artificial intelligence, all this. It has been discussed in length. We have to build, and I thought that the United Nations should have done in this, and this is a critique, given to the students before they just talk, giving all these elements so that you can build and not rethink from the start. At the National Training Academy, chaired by the president, I'm a member of the board of trustees with the president. I can tell you, we have done to our students, we have done all this in detail, so they are really aware of what has been, what will disappear, and how they will look to the future. I think that this part of the job in the dialogue should be revised, and for example, with a lot of other approaches. And this, I think that is a point of critique to the organizers of this part of the. Thank you.
Thank you. And I can see that the questions are coming from people who have spoken before, and so please give the chance for others who did not speak before. تفضل يا فندم.
I thank the panelists very much, and specifically the presentation of Dr. Mustapha Sayed is very interesting because you somehow cut the story short. Everything boils down to the political agenda. And most probably, most of the people here in the room would be aware of this, because this is in a very famous book, Why Nations Fail. And in this book, I learned that you want to answer the questions regarding development, you look at the political agenda. You want to answer the question regarding social reform, then show me the political agenda. And it clearly says that you cannot have development under an authoritarian, extractive, weak regime and institutions. So basically this answers a lot of questions. The real question is, are we heading towards development? And I think the answer is no. Are we going to witness sustainable development? Also, it's no. And as an economist, I see every day progress in economic growth, in positive indicators, praises by the IMF and the World Bank. So can we have economic growth? The answer is yes. You can have economic growth under authoritarian regime, but you cannot have development. We all know GDP is going up, unemployment is going down from 12 to 7, inflation rates going down, current account surplus. If we take a breakdown of all of these, we will see that the growth doesn't lead to development, let alone sustainable. For example, the reduction in unemployment is mainly being witnessed due to people employed in the construction and the extraction and the real estate sector. And these have temporal growth effects, not sustainable. Whereas 67% are employed in the construction and 16% in the manufacturing. And the manufacturing, agriculture sectors are the developmental sectors. I mean, this is just an example. I can proceed with inflation, GDP, and so on and so forth, but there's no time for that, and there's no room for that. So the political agenda is the answer.
Thank you.
And it's not a good answer.
Please. The colleague from South Sudan.
Okay, thanks very much for call observe. I'm Samuel Thon, a law student from NCM University. So my question goes direct to our youth who are in front there. And actually, we have been discussing here all the things, and all these things matter to the youth. So we are imagining the future of the youth, not future of the old people. So my question as a student, and I know a lot of students from Egypt, and the first question is, Egyptian students, they are not really friendly, to international students. So I can say this one, not all of them, but some. One thing, when you come, they first ask, where are you from? So instead, what is your name? They say, where are you from? So this question, I have to change, I have to tell my student to tell other people. So when you get a new person, ask the name first. The name first, and then what? Where are you from? The second question I want to ask is, how can you imagine your relation with international student in 2050? Because now we are imagining the future. So we need to have a relation. And that time in NCM, I was the president of South Sudan in NCM University, and I met with the president of NCM and the vice president. So why we come here as an international student is not about how to read and write. It is about the learning things from different students like you. So we need interactions between Egyptian students and other African students from different countries. So it's not us to come here and stay alone with ourselves. And I can say one example, we have what is called African League of Young Masters. So it is for all African students. And if you can see, those who are there are only students from what? From different countries, but the Egyptian students are not participating. And this is for all of us. So we need to get new ideas, new knowledge from all different people in Egypt, not only those who come here from different countries. So I need you guys to ask, how is your relation with international students be like in 2050? So we need interactions between Egyptian students and other African students. So this is my question.
Thank you for the question. Mind you that you have the opportunity to study outside your country and have this exposure. Students in Egypt didn't maybe have this opportunity as well. Please, Dr. Fouda, تفضل يا فندم.
شكرا دكتور محمد. هو السؤال الأول طبعا.
My first question is to Dr. مصطفى. أنت هل لديك رؤية للعام 2050? My name is Mustapha Fouda. I work with biological diversity, and I'm interested in global assessment of biological diversity. So if we have a vision of what we have done, it's not only planning for the Aswan is different from Upper Egypt, from Alexandria, from Matruh. I mean, yes, the governments are uniquely different. Now, The second point is when people do analysis and to identify a problem and also to become acquainted with vision in order to do it well, there are two important things that I never heard from you. What we might call theory of change. So, for example, it looks like I will not be ready by 2050. Now, the other important thing is when people talk about what you call transformative change, apart from, regardless of the complications, there must be some kind of, don't leave anybody behind. That's a principle. And I'm very happy that a great sector of the people here are very well engaged. And I have also to have an umbrella in order to get all of these people together. And what everybody agrees with is sustainable development. Number three, I think, and this has been discussed a lot, that the economy should be directed at job creation. Of course, with all my respect to Dr. Assam and all the participants here, but in developing countries, the economy should be targeting this, or the fact that you should be work in peace. If we did not live in peace, then we probably wouldn't have done what we did. And then you probably need to have your eye on international, more global moves. I think the Egyptian economy was able to withstand different sort of crises. And I'm not saying we are the best, but what I'm saying is when Dr. Khalid talked about water, so you see, water also made the Egyptian civilization. Flooding and floods, in fact, when we have problems or droughts or whatever, from the times of Prophet Joseph, were able to solve many problems during the times of Muhammad Ali. Also, in very few years, he was able to make quite a radical, some significant change. What I want to say that people will be able to withstand all of this crisis, but we must have a vision. But we also need to know how we can get to that vision. Any questions there? Please, okay.
My name is Karim Hussam. I'm a student in the Faculty of Commerce and Construction at University. Talking about the artificial intelligence and the new manufacturing. We see that the private sector is the only one who is done that in our country. How can the private sector cooperate with the government to
والقطاع الخاص أن يندمجوا بحيث يتعاملون مع هذه الصناعة بشكل جيد.
Egypt is an African country, and in those days we are the president of the African Union. So what about the cooperation between 2063 agenda, which is the African Union agenda,
طبعا لدينا في الأجندة مسألة إفريقيا والاحتكاك بإفريقيا والاندماج مع إفريقيا. علينا أن نلتزم بهذه الأجندة لأننا جزء من إفريقيا. رايا ربيع, an editor with the cabinet, the Egyptian cabinet. My question is to Dr. Osman, Dr. Mustafa. Now, during this mobility, social life is sometimes this results in some kind of political life. What we're seeing now is how can we control this sort of social mobility, elections and so on. And do you think that this what kind of result will it have in the future? Now, Dr. Assam to make some comments on the governor's move or changes that happened recently. Is this a beginning now to involve and include political parties?
We'll allow for 2 minutes for each panelist to respond to the comments and the questions.
دقيقتين فقط لكل.
Yeah, the first question relates to the, I think, the international definition of the role of the state. I don't think there is an agreement on the role of the state at the international level. In the US, I think the definition of the role of the state is very different from that of China. The Chinese are talking about a Chinese model of development, which assigns a very important part to the state. Although the state, in China, is performing its role now in a way different from what it was even in the 1980s and the 1990s. But anyway, the Chinese model of development assigns an important role for the state. Whereas in the United States and some countries in Europe, but particularly in the United States, the definition of the role of the state is different. One could say that it is a sort of minimalist role of the state in the United States, and it is not, and it is an active role of the state in the case of China, not maximalist, but an active role of the state. In my reference to the activities of the state, in fact, I used the World Bank report of 1997, which assigned for the state a regulative capacity, making rules, also adjusting macroeconomic indicators, protecting vulnerable groups, and trying to protect the environment, and also playing a pioneering role. If there is something that is difficult for the private sector to undertake, then the state can take this initiative and maybe leave it later to the private sector. So I think in all accounts, there is a recognition of an important role of the state, at least in providing security, ensuring justice, etc. But I think this goes beyond this to looking at the macroeconomic indicators. This is the minimalist role. But I think for a country like Egypt, I think we need an active role of the state. So I would say that I would be closer to the definition of the role of the state as it is accepted in China without the political dimension of it. And I think I go back to the question of Dr. Maha, who is not listening to me now. I think development could be achieved under an authoritarian regime. In fact, the history of development, most of the developed countries went through an authoritarian phase. If you think of Germany, Italy, Japan, their development took place under an authoritarian regime. China is now considered the most successful case of development. It is an authoritarian regime. South Korea, Singapore, the famous Asian tigers, all of them started their development, their economic development under an authoritarian regime. It is hoped, or at least it is observed, that if economic development is successful, it lays the foundations, it facilitates the transition later on to political democracy, liberal democracy, because the level of education of the people improves. There is a powerful, middle class. There is a powerful private sector. There is a large working class. This would pave the way for democratization, as what happened particularly in South Korea. As for, do we have a vision? I think, our vision is not an explicit one, but I think we can understand it from the actions of the government. However, of course, there is no well-articulated vision of the role of the state. But I think there is a wish. There is a wish, to okay. I don't like to put it that frankly, but I think, the state, the state, in fact, is seen as the armed forces. So, in fact, the role of the state, economic development is undertaken. In fact, the armed forces lead the state. I think this is the implicit vision. We have the military in the media, in tourism, in hotels, in transportation. I think this new idea that the president Okay, so I think it is very clear that, you know, we assign now for the military, in fact, the leading actor in economic development in Egypt is the military. Is this the permanent vision? I doubt it, because I think, you know, I said 2050, the state would have to accept the principle of division of labor and specialization. The function of the armed forces is to protect the country, and then, you know, production, tourism, media, etc., should be left to other actors. So I don't think we have a well-articulated vision. Do we have a notion of, you know, social change? As the I'll answer this in Arabic. هل لدينا فكرة عن نوع التغير الاجتماعي الذي نريده؟ يعني المفروض انه خطه 2030 او كانت 15-30 يعني ينبغي ان المفروض انها كانت قائمه على تصور معين للتغير الاجتماعي المطلوب. يعني اعتقد انها فيها عناصر لهذا التغير الاجتماعي، ولكن ليست هناك نظريه متكامله. على عكس مثلا هضرب مثل في الصين فكره التحديثات الاربع التي اطلقها دينغ شاوبينغ، كان بيتكلم عن تحديث العلم والتكنولوجيا، تحديث الصناعه، تحديث الزراعه، تحديث الدفاع. بكل تاكيد يعني كان وراها فكره نقل الصين لكي تصبح دوله حديثه، والصينيون يستخدمون هذا التعبير، فكان في يعني مفهوم للتغير الاجتماعي. وبكل تاكيد التغير الاجتماعي المنضبط، لانه يعني عن طريق الاسراع بالتنميه الاقتصاديه، فالمفروض انه التحول الاجتماعي سوف يكون تحولا امنا. فبكل تاكيد هنا يعني ده بيشير الى اهميه ان يكون هناك تواجد لعلماء الاجتماع الى جانب علماء الاقتصاد والاخرون عندما يتعلق الامر بالتخطيط لتطور المجتمع في المستقبل. اعتقد هذه الفكره يعني ليست مدركه بكل تاكيد في مصر، ولم تكن مدركه في البنك الدولي، حتى الى ان ادرك البنك الدولي ان اخفاق برامج التكيف الهيكلي كان بسبب عدم ايلاء الاعتبار للجوانب الاجتماعيه. يعني السؤال الاخير الاخت تكلمت عن الحراك الاجتماعي، مش عارف تصل الحراك الاجتماعي او الحراك السياسي، انما يعني بكل تاكيد مساله الحراك السياسي مساله تثير الخوف، على حين انه يعني اي حراك اجتماعي في اي مجتمع لابد ان ترتب عليه ابعاد سياسيه، انما في خوف من الحراك السياسي في مصر بسبب انه يعني ايضا اعتبارات الامن تغلب اي اعتبارات اخرى.
Your Excellency دكتور عصام شرف.
بس اكرر اللي انا فهمته من سؤالك، انه يعني وجود الشباب في الاحزاب والحياه السياسيه هو ده
في حاجه اسمها تنسيقيه الاحزاب.
اوكي. ثانيه.
فماذا عن تأثير هذا على مستقبلا؟ هل هنقدر نشوف بعد كده حزب يشكل حكومة أو ما شابه؟ هل دي بداية موفقة يعني بداية جيدة، أو حضرتك كيف تقيمها يعني؟ والحراك السياسي هل في الأجندة 2050 أي خطوات فعالية لأن احنا نشوف حراك سياسي مستقبلا يعبر على الأقل عن الورقة الانتخابية للشارع مش عن أي حاجة تاني، وإنه قانون الانتخابات هو اللي يكون متحكم بشكل رئيسي مش حاجة تاني؟
هو يعني خلينا نقول إشراك الشباب أساسي، بس المهم الأول في الحقيقة أن يكون هناك نظام سياسي واضح بغض النظر عن هو إيه، تمام؟ وبعد كده إنه التطور ودخول الشباب ده شيء يعني محمود بالتأكيد، بس لازم يكون في هناك يعني نظام سياسي واضح، حتى لو كان له مزايا أو عيوبه يعني، تمام، بس يكون واضح. بالتأكيد 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 لازم هيكون في حراك سياسي في الفترة اللي بتكلم على 2050، ده ضروري. أنا بس برضو هرجع لفكرة السوشيال موبيليتي اللي أنا اتكلمت عليها. السوشيال موبيليتي معناها إنه الشخص يرتفع مستواه الاجتماعي ومستوى نظرة الناس ليه ينخفض، تمام؟ أعتقد إن الفترة الجاية مع وجود هذه التغير الشديد في التقنيات، ومع أكرر تاني إنه يعني اعتباره بحكمة من خلال التعليم والتدريب، ممكن يحصل حراك اجتماعي هام. ليه بقى؟ لأنه إحنا اللي عرفناه وتربينا عليه أن الحراك الاجتماعي بيحصل من خلال التعليم. يعني كل أجدادنا بعتوا أولادهم، كانوا بسطاء ومزارعين، وبعتوا أولادهم يتعلموا، حصل الحراك الاجتماعي. التعليم والحراك الاجتماعي من خلال التقنيات الحديثة دي اللي هي جاية يعني ما نقدرش أبدا نهملها، ده ممكن يعمل حراك اجتماعي. وأنا بقول إنه لو أنا حبيت ألخص الحراك الاجتماعي ده هيبقى إيه؟ هو اتساع الطبقة الوسطى اللي هي في الحقيقة تأكلت إلى حد كبير، هو ده اللي يبقى الهدف بتاعنا. النقطة الثانية حكاية حضرتك الدكتور على الجوب كرييشن. هو بالتأكيد يعني أي تنمية تتطلب هذا، بس على الجانب الثاني إنه لازم نشوف العالم بيتحرك إزاي، لأنه هو ده اللي هيحكمنا في طبيعة الوظائف اللي ممكن تطلع. يعني على سبيل المثال هناك تقرير هام جدا طلع من أمريكا بيوصف الوظائف اللي جايه، يعني مثلا وظيفه صيانه عربيه بدون سائق، الطيارات اللي بدون طيار، مش عارف ده مئات. ولكن اللي عاوز اقوله انه التقرير بيقول انه 35% من الوظائف الحاليه في امريكا ما كانتش موجوده من 25 سنه. إذن هناك أدابتيشن، هناك، ودي مهمة جدا، واحدة منها. وإحنا عشان كده يعني لازم نبدأ من حيث ما انتهى الناس، نبدأ زي ما الحديث قال إنه لازم يكون في الحقيقة الكتالوجات موجودة. وبعدين أنا بقول إنها فرصة ذهبية. ليه؟ لأن إحنا عندنا ناس شاطرين جدا في الICT وفي كل التكنولوجيز دي، فلازم نبني عليهم من دلوقتي. يعني احنا فقدنا العصر النووي، عصر النانو تكنولوجي شوية، انما في الحقيقة الفترة الجاية مع الثورة الصناعية الرابعة اعتقد ان ممكن تبقى فرصة ذهبية لو استغلناها ولازم يكون في مشروع خاص بالموضوع ده، لا تترك في الحقيقة للسوق. لان انت لو زودت الوظائف بعيدا عما سيحدث في المستقبل القريب، الوظائف دي هتنتهي. يبقى احنا كده في الحقيقة كأننا بنعدم الناس اللي رايحة للوظائف دي. الحاجة يمكن الثانية بسرعة يعني يمكن استغل الوقت على حكاية الخطاب الديني. في الحقيقة الخطاب الديني أنا أعتقد مهما عملنا مش هيجيب إلا إذا سبقوا تجديد الخطاب الثقافي، لأن أنت داخل في حتة الناس متشبعة بيها، فلازم تغير يبقى في ثقافة مختلفة. وأنا اللي أنا في الحقيقة يعني ما أقدرش، لأن كل محاضراتي بتكلم على المشروع التنويري. المشروع التنويري اللي هو المحور بتاعه هو الآخرية، ثقافة الآخر. بدون ما تكون موجودة دي هتفضل الخطاب الديني مهما عملنا مش هيجيب أثر. إذن يسبقه خطاب ثقافي، مشروع تنويري ثقافي على أعلى مستوى يهتم بالمعاني قبل المباني دي. فأنا بس حبيت أضيف الحتة دي لأنها في الحقيقة بنتكلم كتير وبيبقى في الموضوع بتاع الخطاب الديني بيظهر حاجات وبتطلع خلافات بتزود الانقسامات. شكرا
دكتور عصام. Mr. Samah, please.
Thank you. First, I would like to respond to my colleague here in the middle that was asking about the international students' integration. Well, as an international student myself, I've been studying abroad for the longest time, and this is one of the challenges you just have to face as an international student, in Egypt or outside Egypt. As an international student, this is one of the challenges that you face. Not all societies and communities are the same, but it was a hassle living in a few different countries, adapting. I'm Arab. I come from the Middle East, so there was this specific look that we had in like these Western countries that was not reflecting the entire culture of the people, but this was present, and this was a challenge that we had to deal with as international students abroad. As the comment that Dr. Sharif has made, well, of course, Dr. Sharif is a distinguished pioneer, and I have nothing to add after the comments that he said, but maybe my points were misinterpreted as of I was using a very basic example of the past. Of course, in the past, we didn't have as much technology and tools to forecast and foresee what's happening in the very near future as we do today. These papers, the 2016 Davis document and the other documents are present online, and they're accessible to anyone, governments and non-governments. But today, the educational system, people are studying almost exactly what was being taught in universities 30 years ago. The medical curriculum that I'm studying today is almost the exact same medical curriculum that my father was studying 30 years ago. Yes, there are updates, but still there are obsolete techniques that are still being taught today. This was the point I was trying to reach. There are modifications that happen, but we need to reach the era that we're foreseeing. Documents are present, and documents predict that some jobs are going away. But are we doing the work as government or non-government organizations to adapt in the educational system to prepare these young students for the future or not? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sama. Ms. Naveen. Okay, I was informed that we are running out of time. We ran out of time, actually, and we have to end up this session. I would like to thank you for your patience. I would like to thank the panelists. I'd like to thank the organizers of the dialogues from the UN and the Alexandria Library, and thank you all.
Thank you, our dear panelists. Now we are going to break for lunch and come back for some other speeches and talks from our distinguished guests.